Now that we've set our free fall, the next thing that we want to check on a scissor is we want to check and make sure that the tips are crossing. On this particular scissor, you can see that the tips are. As you close your blade, you can see that the tips overlap sufficiently. On this scissor, which is very similar to the first one that we did, you can see obviously the tips are not crossing. So now we have to deal with the tips. The way that you'll deal with the tips is one of three ways. You'll either bend the handles, or you will take the tips back, or you'll take a little bit off of the bumper that's between the handles. Now, the first thing that you want to do is if you decide that you're going to bend the handle of the scissor, you need to check and make sure that the metal is soft. One way to do that is to take a file and file the inside of the handle of the shear. You want to file back and forth and see if the file actually has some bite. In this case, this one does have some bite, and this shear has a soft enough handle to bend. If we do this to this other scissor, we'll run this back and forth, but there's no bite. It just wants to slide back and forth. That means that this handle is a cast handle, and we don't want to try and bend this because it will break. Now, there's a few ways that you can tell the difference between a cast shear and a forged shear. One would be open it up. If we lay these scissors right next to each other in an open position, and we'll see if we can get the camera lined up here. If you look at the back side here of the blade, and let me lift this up just a little bit for you so you can see this in the video. You can see that on that very back side right there, there's a lip. It's a distinguished lip, and it's got almost like a 90-degree straight down into this portion of the handle here where it's been cut out. Now, a cast scissor is liquid metal poured into a mold, and that liquid metal solidifies, and when it solidifies, the grain structure of the metal is very porous. It's very easy to break. There's a lot of air pockets in it, and it's very simple for that to just start a crack and boom, it just keeps on going. Now, if you see that lip, that's usually telling you this is more than likely a cast scissor, because it would be very difficult to get a polished edge that's that sharp, and to do that by hand, doing it freehand. Now, with this other shear here, you can see on the back side in the ride area, this is called the ride area back here, you can see that there's no lip. It just blends right into the back side of that handle. Now, that's not to say that you can't ever have a forged scissor like this one is with a lip on the back side of it, or at least what would appear to be a lip. I have a shear here, we'll put into the picture, and if we lift this up and we take a look, you can see where looks like a lip right on the back side. But you can see that it's a swooping lip. It's not as crisp and sharp of a lip as it was on the other shear that was cast. So just because there's a lip does not necessarily mean that it's a cast scissor, but it's a good start. You want to take a look there first. Also, the cast scissor, you'll notice, comes from Taiwan. You always want to take a look and see what the name is on your shear. Now, as of the shooting of this video, the majority of the scissors that come out of Taiwan are cast. So if you see Taiwan, it's another good time to assume that it may be a cast scissor and proceed with bending the handles with caution. Now, what I want to do, this shear is okay. We want to go ahead and take our forged scissor and we'll show you how to bend the handles. Now, again, if we look at these tips, we can see that the tips do not cross. The way that we're going to deal with that is we'll set the scissor into our handle bender here at Wolff. What we do is we do a 3-point contact. We want to slip the ring over the little stud here with the little brass insert on it, and then what we do is we place the outside of the handle up against the pivot point of the handle bender's handle. You of course then put your blade in the stop block, and that is going to give you your 3-point connection. This is your pull point, this is your bend point, and this is your stop point that holds everything. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to flex. Now I need to go ahead and show you the tip here of the scissor. So we'll boost out just a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit hard to see now with the camera, and we want to zoom out just a smidge here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull back because we want to see the handle and everything move. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flex this, and what I'm doing is I'm just doing a little bit of a bend at a time. As I look right here, I'm trying to see that I'm only moving about 1/8 of an inch at a time, just a gentle flex. And as I move, you can see now that I have closed the tips. If I take this out and I put this up against a dark surface, you can see now that the tips are overlapping, where before they were spread open like this. Now you can see that they overlap. And I would continue to do this until I had a sufficient overlap, or an overlap that I thought looked cosmetically appealing. We're going to bend it just a little bit more. We'll lay it back down again and see how we've done. Let's zoom into that tip just a smidge, and you can see that we have a good overlap of the tips. Now, if I had gone up into the handle bender and I went ahead and I bent this too far so that the blades are actually overlapping one another when I was done, and we'll take a look at this here, then I would have to go ahead and do a reverse bend. So when we zoom in with the camera, you're going to see here that the blades actually overlap each other. You can see that basically on this portion of the shear here, you'd be able to cut yourself because the edge itself extends over the back side of the spine of the tip of that scissor. So what we'd have to do is go back up to our handle bender. We would reinsert the blade scissor back in to the handle. We're going to put the ring back over that brass insert, but we're going to now put the bend point in the center of the handle. And of course that stop block is still going to stop up against the side of the scissor. You want to hold the scissor parallel to the table and then bend back towards yourself. And what that's going to do is it will reset those blades so that now they're no longer overlapping one another. That's how you would bend a shear with the handle bender. Now, there's also another option, which you can use a brass hammer, or what Wolff will call a professional scissor adjusting tool, and either an anvil or a block of wood, or even something like a woodworking vise would work. In other words, you want something solid that you can knock up against. What we'll do here is we'll take our blade, we'll take our hammer, and we want to lay it down on the block. Now you always want to make sure that when you hold your scissor, you never put your hands between the blades. You never want to put yourself in this kind of a position to strike, because if you hit, you don't want to cut yourself. Always use caution. Always use your head. Always hold someplace where your hands are not between those blades. In this case, I'm pinching right at the pivot point of the scissor. This way I can hold this other blade out of the way and I can do the strike on the handle. We'll simply strike it. Well, that probably moved it way too much. We're going to go ahead and put this here. And if we come down right here, we can actually kind of show you where we overlap just a little bit too much. Let's take a look. You can see the tips are overcrossing again. So now what we'll do is we'll go back up to that anvil again, and we will lay that blade down, again, holding it at the pivot point, and we'll strike the inside. When we strike the inside, you can see how that handle moved. And now, again, we have tips that cross. Now, one of the most sickening sounds you can ever hear is the breaking of a handle of a scissor. And it can happen from time to time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use an older pair of the Wolff 100 scissors, and I'm going to show you what happens when you overflex a cast scissor. All right, let's go ahead and zoom in right about right here. We're going to give everybody a show. We're going to flex this just a little bit. Again, I'm only doing about 1/8 of an inch of flex. You can see that as long as I stay within about that 1/8 of an inch, and it's a little bit hard to see, I know, while we're doing this up close, but as long as I'm staying about within that 1/8 of an inch of flex, I'm usually pretty safe. But if I give this a good hard pull, there she goes. A sickening feeling, because that means at this point you're probably going to be replacing a scissor. So make certain that if you have a cast scissor, that you use one of the following methods to bend your blade, to deal with your tips. What you want to do is either take a little bit off of the bumper or take a little bit off of the tip. Now,